That's as good as I can give you. That's just a double job.
There's 5 of them.
Everyone, please join me in the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Glad to see everyone out tonight. I'll call the meeting to order. Members present are Darrell Baker, County Clerk, Terry Matthews, President, Charles Vance, Commissioner, Phoebe Harris, Commissioner. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the special session of the Lincoln County Commission meeting that was held on April 16, 2015 at 5:30 p.m. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That being unanimous, the motion carries. Next, is to approve the minutes of the regular session of Lincoln County Commission meeting that was held on April 16, 2015 at 6 p.m.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. With that being unanimous, the motion carries. Next is to approve the minutes of the special session of the Lincoln County Commission meeting that was held on April 21st, 2015 at 3 p.m. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. That being unanimous, the motion carries. Next, we have public comment. Do we have anyone sign in for public comment? Since we have no one, we're going to move to discussion of concern, possible action. This is an update on the NFIP and Community Assistance visit from the state, West Virginia State Flood Office. Welcome, gentlemen.
Commissioners, hi everybody. My name is Richard Cart, and with me is Greg McCann. We work together at the Capitol Building down in the Dungeons. And we're with the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program. And both of us have been around for some time. Greg used to be with, I've had a bunch of careers I don't want to talk about. Greg was with FEMA before, but we have a few years of experience in floodplain management. And just to give you a quick idea, I'm not going to be all night here. I'm going to give you a chance to ask questions if you like. But what we'd like to do is just give you sort of a brief capsule of what we do and why we do it. Basically, there are 55 counties, and they're all in the National Flood Insurance Program. Let me get my little cheat sheet out here so I don't miss anything. I'm not going to be 2 hours or anything like that. But what we try to do is to service those communities into designing their development and building in such a way that it doesn't wind up flooding people, other people next to them, or upstream, downstream, or themselves. Because flooding is the #1 disaster in this country by far. And so right now we have a presidential declaration in 26 counties. And so you may have seen some FEMA people coming around here to check on flood damage in certain areas. And a lot of people have complaints about FEMA. It's a big, complex organization. They have like 160,000 employees. And then there are all the state people. But to finish up on what we do, we service the 55 counties and 220 communities, some as small as Thurman, population 5. But these people they have joined the program, and just to back up and say, well, what is all this NFIP? For many years, what the government did was, for flooding episodes, was to build dams and levees and that sort of thing, and just to replace houses with a lot of tax money for the people. And we got together in a lot of big committees over a number of years, starting in the 50s, and finally, in 1968, they passed the bill called the National Flood Insurance Program Act. And what they basically said, we're going to do what's called a quid pro quo. We're going to make FEMA now. We're going to make available to all the communities that join our program the opportunity to buy flood insurance, basically at cost, because the insurance companies wouldn't touch it. There was no way they could charge enough, and people would pay it in order to cover their houses and make a profit and do the capitalization and all those good things the company does. FEMA says, we're going to do it at cost. And so we will provide flood insurance, people, an opportunity for people to buy flood insurance in the community who are in a floodplain. And so then, the second part of it was, if you have a disaster, a flooding disaster, we will come in and we'll make grants and loans, small business loans. We'll do the hard stuff, and they do. At this latest, what they call, I think it's 4062 disaster, they brought 138 people into Charleston. They were booked down to what they call the Joint Field Office down on Sullivan Way. They'll be there for several months. And they go out and visit all these people, and we assist them. We'll go out with them and do what they call post-disaster visits and estimate what their problems are, both for public buildings and for individual bridges, washing out, whatever it might have been. And so a lot of people wind up thinking, well, they're just going to get a big check or money, but maybe they won't get as much as they thought. But they will get something, and there will be a response. And FEMA's thing here was, they said, we'll do this for you. We'll make the insurance available, and we'll provide disaster care if you will adopt a floodplain ordinance and enforce some minimum standards that we have for building and development in your community. And development is not just building a house. It might be somebody that wants to put a bill in a creek that could possibly cause a problem to the next door house or block it, cause flooding upstream. So flooding has a mind, or water has a mind of its own. It's going to go someplace. It's going to seek its level. If something is in the way, it's going to go around it to somebody else that previously was not in a floodplain, maybe, or whatever the situation might be. Many people don't realize just how disastrous flooding can be to a house. If you get a sustained 1 foot of water over your first floor in the house, you have ruined half of the value of the house right there. Electrical, you name it, it's all got to be done. It's not just water. If anybody's been around a flood, you know what I'm talking about. Flooding is dirt, it's disease, it's bad news. So anyway, that's why they created the program. They said, we are going to map the floodplains, and if you choose to live in the floodplain, you're going to bear some of the cost. You're going to get flood insurance, and I'll explain that in a minute. And so the idea is then that the premiums you would pay for the claims that were made when flood does come. So I don't want to get too deeply into it. It's a complicated program. But that's really what they call a quid pro quo. You do this for me, I will do this for you. Now, what they do is that they opened this program in 1968, and a lot of communities kind of sat back and said, well, you know, maybe we'll get in, maybe we won't. And a lot of people looked at the insurance that was made available and said, I got homeowners insurance, I don't need that stuff, or many things like that. And so they didn't get much. So federal government, being what it is, said we got to tighten this up some. And so in 1973, they passed what they call the Flood Disaster Act. And what that basically said is that big bill. Basically, it said that if you live in a floodplain and you want to build a house, and you go to a federally backed bank or institution, in order to get a loan, you will have to carry flood insurance for the life of that loan. And so that's the way they wrote the people and the communities in. Said that the communities, if you want disaster assistance, you will join this program. It sounds, you know, like a big hammer. Remember, we're the state. Our job is to assist, kind of be the buffer between the federal government, FEMA, the NFIP program, and communities here. Our job, we are advisors. We don't tell you what to do. We can't. And we don't want to. What we want to do, it sounds like the old thing of the government, we're here to help you, but it's true. It's our job to help you through problems, and if you run into a difficult situation, permitting, or whatever it might be, you can call us, or Rick Helton, the floodplain manager here, can call us, and we'll work you through it. We don't have all the answers. It's a big program, as I said, but there's some basic steps, and so we do training of our floodplain managers. As I said, there's almost 300 of them, and so we go around to communities like this and give talks when invited, and if sometimes a community is just not doing the job, it catches our attention. Somebody calls, somebody complains, said so-and-so let so-and-so get a permit to do, or didn't get a permit to do this, and I had to get a permit. And the next thing I'm going to do is go to court and sue. Now this is the county's floodplain ordinance, so they're responsible for it. You sign off, I've got a copy of it right here. They renew it every 5 years or so. And it's, the last thing we want to see is the community get in trouble with that, because FEMA has some very strict protocol. When they see a number of violations in the community, they get real excited, and they come in, and they do a complete study of just what the enforcement has in for a community. We don't want that to happen, so we try to stay ahead of it and say, look, you know, you're asking for a little bit of trouble here. You could be put on probation or suspension, and people would lose their right to have flood insurance. If a company was suspended, a county or a town, that invokes their right to buy flood insurance. They go to the bank, and the bank says, you can't get a loan, but you got to have flood insurance, and you're no longer eligible to get it. So it's the government's way of kind of having you in a basket and making communities conform. And for the most part, there are very few places on suspension or probation, but it does happen. So I just want to throw that out. It's not a threat. It's just something that there has to be a way to, just like the federal government has you do a lot of other things you don't necessarily want to do. Again, it's in the development. So we have floodplain managers come to training, and we tell them the basics, and these are smart people. They know what to do. And so their job is to keep their eye out in the community, the county, wherever it might be. And when if people do not come in for a permit, in a number of counties in West Virginia, there's a lot of people that just don't know you have to have a permit if you're going to build a flood, but you do. And so they just go ahead and build, they pull their trailer in, whatever it is, their mobile home, or they start building the house, and never say anything to anybody. Next thing you know, here's the floodplain manager shows up and says, did you get a permit for that? And they say, well, what are you talking about? And there you go, we hear this story every day. But the whole thing is becoming more and more, people are becoming more and more aware of these floodplains. And just to kind of back up just a little bit, there's 3 parts to the program. One is that they provide the insurance. Number 2 is they'll set certain regulations, like your first floor of your house, as an example, has to be built to what they call the base flood elevation. That is the expected rise of the flood. What that is, the standard flood is the 1% flood. Some people have heard it called the 100-year flood. And so that 100-year flood is kind of a misnomer. It doesn't just happen once every 100 years. It's a statistical probability that it could happen. It has a 1% chance of happening each year, every year. It might not happen for 50 years. It might happen 3 years in a row. So that's the way they work. And it was, you can't have every community building to the mother of all floods like Big Sandy or Katrina or Irene or some of these other Mississippi flooded a couple of years ago. But you all know that in the West Virginia mountains, that these creeks can come up in a big hurry. Might not have come up for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and all of a sudden, bam! We went to Logan a year and a half ago, 2 years, and I just went on what they call the PDAs, and we went to along Mud River Fork there, and we counted 100 houses totally damaged. Can be replaced. You know, what do you do? And most of the people didn't have flood insurance. Flood insurance, on the average, will cost about $600 a year on the average. It costs you more if you have it built correctly, or if you live in a real high-risk area. And people, there are 5.5 million people in this country that have flood insurance policies. Flooding is not covered. Any major flooding is not covered on the homeowner's policy. So with that in mind, when they came out with this act in '73, all of a sudden they had 21,000 communities into the program. 5.5 million had flood insurance. In West Virginia, it's a much smaller number, but still sizable. And so that's where the state of the thing is today. Again, that $600 figure is about average, and it's a quarter of those 5.5 million, or over 1.5 million people don't even live in the floodplain. They live just outside it, but they're smart, and the policy is real cheap, $300 to $400 a year. If you don't live in a floodplain, but you're close to one, nature does not respect the lines drawn on the map. It will do what it wants to, so the flood may well be well above that predicted base flood elevation. So that's what we do. We go around and talk and educate and try to solve problems. And our job is not to say you can't do this, you can't build here, but you can, but you're going to have to do it a certain way. And that's what Rick's job is. And previous to him was Guy Browning and Steve Comas. And Rick, we've got a good one here. We know him, and we do Guy, and these guys have been to training, and they know what they're talking about. And if they don't, they'll call us. They do it all the time. And if we don't know the answer to it, we run into some pretty complex problems. I mean, real complex. We call FEMA and say, help, that's what you're there for. You're our gatekeeper. Tell us what to do with this. Tell us how to advise these people. So, the community has to appoint and train the floodplain manager. And your ordinance here, this particular ordinance, was effective as of 16 October 2013. And again, they come in every year. They're constantly doing technical studies in what they call the floodplain. In West Virginia, for example, there's like 35,000 miles of streams. Only 12,000 of those have been mapped by FEMA, and only 4 of that 12 have been done what they call detailed studies, meaning that engineers and surveyors are right on the spot looking at that river or that creek, and they've got water gauges, and they've got hydraulic studies, and they've got hydrology data, and they map it out very specifically and say, this is what the BFE, or the base flood elevation, will be. So that's that kind of gets at that without getting into it too much. What's been determined from studies by FEMA is that for every $1 put into floodplain management, whether it's elevating or buying out a house that gets flooded all the time, or declaring a certain piece of property what they call a green space or open space, and nothing can be built on it. You can put a park on it or something like that. But you can't put a house on it or a restroom. And so the idea that when they spend this money, for every $1 they spend, they tell us that people save $4. The program works. Lincoln County, for example, I wrote these figures down someplace. They've had, in the past, since they got into the program, I don't know where it is, I think it was, you have in this county 225 people that have flood insurance, over the years, the FEMA program has paid out $181 million just for Lincoln County. So I can't believe that. It's true. We collect about $3.5 billion each year in premiums all over the country. And you may have read stories that tell you that they're in trouble. They're $24 billion in the red. Premiums have not covered. So there have been acts passed called the Bears Waters a couple of years ago. And just this past year, 2014, President Obama signed the Flood Protection Affordability Act. Everybody likes to call everything affordability. But the premiums are going to go up some, but there's still companies that come and gone and said, oh, we'll get into that floodplain management insurance. We'll make it go. You won't find it, and you're not going to be able to afford it. Your best bet is the government on this particular thing. What they do is you can get the flood insurance from practically any major insurance company. Just call them and say you carry flood insurance. 90% of them do. You know, say you've gone to a bank and you want to get a loan, they say you got to get flood insurance, and you either get it or they'll do it for you. So you know, force placing, you don't want that to happen because you'll go to Lloyd's or London or somebody who won't like it. But basically, you go to them and they will come out and look at your house and they'll rate it. They'll give it an insurance rating. Say, here you are. Here's your policy. And that's what they do. They get a certain commission to write the policy and to renew it each year and come out and rate your house. But if there's a claim of any kind for flooding, the federal government pays, not the insurance company. Their hands are out of it at that point. They're just doing the service. So that's what the program is all about. It's the kind of thing you can talk about for hours and hours, and believe me, I've been through it. But it's the overall effect of it is to protect lives and property. And the program does work. Like anything else, you're going to run into snags. We fight, and I mean literally fight with teams all the time about certain things, and they usually win. But they do listen because we hear you, and that's important to say to them, look, in this particular situation, we've got to find a way to make this work for this particular person, for Walmart, whoever it might be. And so we have to look at engineering studies and all sorts of stuff. We're not that smart. We look at a lot of stuff that's a lot smarter than we are. We know where to go and get help. The other thing that in terms of these floodplains, they provide the insurance, they give you the regulations, and they provide the floodplain maps. They call those FIRMs, Flood Insurance Rate Maps. These are official FEMA maps of the floodplain in your community. And again, some of the areas in West Virginia and other parts of the country are studied, and they have a pretty darn good idea of where that water is going to come to. But about 75% of them are what they call approximate studies. They've gone in and said, well, we know the water is going to go in here, it's going to go laterally this far, we just don't know how high it's going to go. And so it costs about $10,000 a mile to do a detailed study. So that's why there's so much what they call approximate A zones. So when you get into that situation, and this is the toughest part for floodplain manager in the community, is how do you have these people build if you don't know how high the water's going to be? Well, we come up with a number of things, not us, but nationally, and we say until we can get these studies done, which would cost on the order of several billions of dollars, what we do is we say we want to build reasonably safe flooding. That's a pretty broad mantra. And so what you do is you go in and say a fellow wants to put a double wide down next to a stream, and you go in and he's got a half an acre, and he said, you say, well, you know, it's flooded here. I know it has. Historically, the water's come up to here, and it's gonna flood here. So here's what I want you to do. I'm a permit officer. Before I give you a permit to build, this is what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to elevate that first floor 3 feet above what they call the highest adjacent grade, the highest point right behind your house. And that gets your first floor up there. It gives you some safety factor. And if you have a crawl space, you're gonna have to have what they call flood bits around the foundation to let the water in and out when it floods. Because if you don't, 1 foot of sustained water against the concrete will collapse the foundation. And the foundation goes, it's gone. The house is gone. I saw this, we've seen it floods every time. So I mentioned that you've got 220 some people that have flood insurance. There's probably 75% of the people who live in a floodplain already own their house. They don't have to carry flood insurance, so they don't. And when they get hit, the government will come in one time and say, okay, we will grant you a grant, we'll give you a small business loan, but in order to get this loan, from now on, you've got to carry flood insurance. So it's the same old game again, you see. And so that's where it's going. It's a lot of talk going on and new laws being passed. The program monetarily has got to recoup in order to be sustained. And there are people who say, well, we don't even need a flood program. What are they going to get next? They ain't going to get private insurance. They're not. They're going to want to make money, and they're going to charge you for the full risk of what that flooding could be. So that's where it's stuck right there. Your best deal is flood insurance. So reasonably safe from flooding. The average policy in Lincoln County is right at $800. Now, I mentioned before, nationally it's $600. So with all the potential for flooding and risk in West Virginia because of the mountains and the valleys and that sort of thing, flash floods occur more regularly than they do, say, in Indiana. So it's a little higher here, but it's still a deal. And again, if you live outside the marked floodplain, they call that preferred risk. You can get a policy for as low as $150 a year. It's chicken for you, really, because when one comes along and you lose half of all of your house, there you go. Now, we try to provide the literature, and let's see, I had something else here. The floodplain manager does the permitting. He helps the public by having elevation certificates, and then you need to get an elevation certificate. You will have to hire a surveyor. Average cost for a surveyor to come in for a normal situation is about $500. His job is to keep these folks up here and the public informed about the floodplain management program. And we provide the literature, wall maps that he can have in his office when you come in for a permit, that sort of thing. And there's lots of educational opportunities online. 3 of the most important websites, if you wanted to look up and say, well, what's the map for my area? Floodplain map. You can go on, and I brought a list of main websites. One of them is called, for maps, it's called MSC FEMA gov/portal. If you want to learn about flood insurance, you can call floodsmart.gov, or that is go online to do it. And I'll leave this here, it's available. We also have one of the 2 in the country, what they call the flood determination tool. You can go on your computer and you can type in mapwestvirginiagov./flood, and you can pull up this flood tool and plug in your address and all sorts of little good stuff. It tells you what to do, and it will show you if you're in one of those flood zones or how close you are. How we do it. Yeah, okay. But anyway, that's available to you if you want to do it in self-education. I don't know if Lincoln County has a web page or not. Kanawha County has one, a number of other counties. And that's about it. anytime the floodplain ordinance is available, anytime you want it, if you want a copy of it, call us, we'll send you one. I'm just gonna stop there. Are there any questions about anything that take up too much more of your time? Yes, sir.
The Mud River Dam up there, I understand from some of the folks that live downstream from that, since that dam was put in, that FEMA or whoever has not came back in and reassessed the flood elevation for those people. Do you know anything about that, or can you?
Yeah, we
speak
came
to
over
that?
here, if I see your question now, when they did the maps, FEMA keeps their ears to the ground, but they don't hear everything. And when they did the last maps, I forget the exact timing, but they didn't know about that dam. Somehow it went in and snuck in. And as a result, they had certain flood elevations on what they call the berm, and they were wrong. And so a year and a half ago, FEMA came in from Philadelphia, the main engineers up there, John Janowitz and Dick Randall, and we were here. And because what triggered it was there was a school that wanted to be built someplace close by here, or some particular facility.
It was Lincoln County High School.
Yeah, okay, and it was gonna be in the floodway. They said, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And they said, yep, something is wrong. So they put in something like $1 million studying this stuff. It's not finished yet to my knowledge. So it is being worked on, so it's solved. Dams can change the whole picture, as you know, as well as levees.
So
Did that help any?
there could possibly be some relief for the people who are actually carrying flood insurance right now. Is that what you're getting at?
Could be, and I don't want to say it that way, and I'll tell you why, Commissioner. Is because sometimes it goes the other way.
Right.
But I think in this case, it's going to go in his favor. And when FEMA does that, and say the base flood, just say as a figure of speech that the base flood elevation was 10 on the river or whatever stream, and they came in and they did a new study, well then it might drop to 9 or go up to 11. And in a lot of cases, it's about 50-50. Go either way. And that's all I can tell you, because I'm not an engineer. But I've listened to enough of them to know that they wrestle with this thing all the time. And that's just, I mean, they do the best they can, but if they're not on site, they're looking at a table full of maps, two-dimensional, just like you. They don't know whether it's a hill here or there, or what the topography is. I mean, they've got topography maps. And some of those topography maps, USGS, are 50 years old. You've had subsidence, you've had any number of things that have occurred. And they're working on that, but just like everything else, it takes longer than it takes, kind of thing. Did that help?
So the maps that we're working off of were before the dam was built?
I can't say that now because I haven't kept up with that particular thing. I just know that they have either recently finished or in the process of finishing that new study. And when they do, they will revise the maps.
And that study was triggered, it was possible.
That was, I forget who did that. It was either, I guess I'm getting old, but I forget some of the things I've done. It was either me or Greg. There's only 4 of us there in the office. One of us.
Kevin was one thing
and
that.
it could have been either one, and I guess it was Kevin. And he said, wait a minute, this particular thing can't be right. And that's when he called Janowitz and some of these other engineers out there, and they came down to a meeting here, and we talked about it. Let's talk about it, discussed it. They had many things to do, but they particularly took that project under somewhat immediate advisement.
I know the big issue is, and I know Dave's got family that lives up there in my area, that, people are still paying this high dollar flood insurance up through there, and they have seen since '93, that's when that dam was completed. The water is getting nowhere near where it used to as a result of that dam being in, but yet nothing has been done to change these people's flood insurance.
Your mom and dad's place, it's 65 years old, so it's older than that. it's never flooded in there, but now it's nowhere near getting close to their house, and they still pay $1,600 a year for flood insurance.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to the situation in detail. As I said, I'm not an engineer, but that's the kind of thing that this engineer I spoke of, John Dennis, he's ready to talk about it, if you will. Some people in the meantime are going to be inconvenienced. There's only so much you can do. You can only address the situation, then you've got, everybody's got a step to do.
Can't the homeowners, go out and get a base flood elevation established and an elevation certificate to remove that from the map?
They can do that, and then have their house really rated. And again, this is kind of, it's like one of those complex problems I was talking about. You can't solve it in here, or, you know, it's got to be, follow a certain course. It may take time to be inconvenient. But they don't ignore these things. They know they make mistakes, and when they find out what they are through a project that occurs, or somebody complaining that so-and-so's house is flooding mine, and this wasn't permitted right, and so forth, and you have to start from scratch.
But if they get H&H studies, they can probably,
Yeah, I can't promise you what it's gonna show, but I can
well, I
tell
mean,
you.
it shows, it
They
shows.
do one, yeah, now they've done studies, H&H studies for this particular area. How far is that down the way? I forget, it's 5-7 miles or something.
It's probably 15 miles.
50, so I don't know.
I think
Mr.
Commissioner
Cart, I was gonna ask you.
Sir?
I forgot what I was gonna say when I saw Sam. No, I forgot. Just, I'm sorry.
So, no,
You'll
so
be coming.
FEMA's study should be, FEMA's doing it, right?
Yeah, now, you just had new maps 2 years ago.
We're listening to
Now,
the
you
stories.
say, wait a minute, that dam was built in 93, I can't answer that. I can just tell you, once they became aware of it, they started working to redo it. Or stage itself, don't
Because our hospital's been open 8 years.
Could the county commission, draft a letter and request,
Yes?
just request the status of that map, of the maps for that area?
Well, I mean, obviously, when I go back, I'll call Philadelphia back, talk to them and see where it is. What's the deal with it, what's going on, I'll let you know something.
I appreciate it.
And, you know, it's like, I hate to make promises about certain things, but sometimes dealing with people is like dealing with other things.
Well, it's always a start. I mean, you know, if
Yeah.
you go, if you
No, I'll
contact
do
me,
that.
we can write a letter asking about the status of the maps. We can
Yeah,
have our
because,
floodplain manager send it out. And, yeah, we get things moving that way.
I know, my boss, Kevin Sneed, knows about that. He knows more than I do about the status of it, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, I hope.
Hey,
Other
Mr. Clark,
questions?
do we have any other questions?
We appreciate the opportunity to be here, and anytime you want us to come back, we have regular training sessions around the state. We do webinars, and you call us at our office. I'll leave a couple of my cards here on the table. Please help yourself, and call us if you have a problem or want to talk further about it. But the guy you need to talk to sitting right here, he's not bashful. He's had a lot of experience in other areas as well. And just remember, if you want to build in the floodplain, you need a permit. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Next on the agenda, we have Region 2 Small Cities Block Grant Drawdown Request in the amount of $29,398.22. Yes, sir. For the Phase 1 of Big Arts.
Hey, from Bighorn, you said about everything I had to say as far as what I had to present tonight. The project itself is going well. They're working to hopefully finish up what they're currently doing right now before they open up the next 2 branches that they had the underground on when they did the bid opening. So everything should be complete by August as far as finishing up the construction side of things. So, and that could be touched over there within a week or 2, maybe push closer to September, but nonetheless, everything should be done and done certainly for the end of the year as far as close out and things of that nature from my end of it. So
So
going
we
great.
need, we need a motion to, give the president permission, authorization to sign. So moved.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That'd be unanimous. Motion
You know what number? Drawdown request number,
It's on there.
carries.
that's all they didn't know.
Drawdown request number 14.
Thank you.
There you go, sir. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Julia? Yeah. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, put this on here, I was going to propose, because of the summer and the amount of work that we have during the summer months, as in, just like last year, instead of having 2 commission meetings, just have 1 commission meeting on the first Thursday of June, July, and August, instead of having 2. Talking with Mary and Daryl, we're not going to have any problems with the bills or anything like that. If there's any pertinent business that we need to attend to, then we can always call a meeting.
So these will be the first.
It'd be the first Thursday of June, first Thursday of July, and the first Thursday of August. Do we have a motion?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That be unanimous, motion carries. Next, we have unfinished business, possible action, and we have the Coalfield Development Corporation. I don't know, I've had a chance to look at the community design housing plan, and I think that you all wanted us to approve this.
To adopt it as
The
the
adopted
county
plan,
plan.
that's what I was saying, as the county commission. I've read it, seems like something that's good, something that we need in our area, and I would recommend it. If there's any for discussion, I would make a motion to adopt the Lincoln County Community Design Housing Plan.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That be unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we had building permit fees update. This was put on here from the meeting last month. Speaking with Rick Helton, there has been some, I guess the other counties surrounding us have updated their building permit fees. So what we're going to do is go back with the Lincoln County Planning Commission, look at those again, and come back to the commission. Okay, so no action there. Next, we have new business. You all have seen the new business. I'm sure you've been able to read that. If there's not any objection to the new business, I'd like a motion to approve all new business.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That be unanimous, motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have anything else, further discussion?
I
You
do
have
have,
some
yes, I have
discussion?
something. During the budget process, we decided that we would have to discontinue Government Day. And that was primarily due to the cost at Allen Creek from rent and associated utilities and things like that.
And of personnel.
So last week, it was the last week of Government Day. And I think the assessor had expressed to Mary that he had been receiving a lot of calls from people. And so I think had the commission office. But, so anyway, I made some phone calls towards the end of the week. Went yesterday and met with the library board. And the library board agreed yesterday to let us use the Allen Creek Library for Government Day with no charge at all. And we can still have it on Thursdays, that's not a problem. I told them it'd be better to have it because that's when people were used to going. So we need to just let people know it's going to be at the library instead of the building.
I appreciate all your hard work. It's a great idea. It's going to save us some money. I know we were paying rent there at the right there in Allen Creek. So that will definitely save us some money on utilities. One thing that we do have to do though is we have to work with the assessor and to make sure that he has adequate personnel to be able to work that. And I think that with looking at how much it would cost to have that, I think that
There was one half-time employee cut during the budget meetings because her primary responsibility was government pay.
and that was about $12,000 a year.
She's part-time, she's budgeted $12,000 a year. She's budgeted in July.
So, and there were only 2 days a week were government days, right? Before
Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the day
Along that
she,
same line, Delegate Eldridge had called me a couple of weeks ago. We talked about the same situation that Commissioner Harless brought up, and he was concerned, and I basically went over the same thing with him, what the costs were to us at each of the centers and things like that, as best I knew, and things of that nature, and asked him if he could also look for something that might be free over there that we could use and be available to us to use over there. He brought up about us having it at the library before, but it was only 1 day a month before.
I even called the librarian yesterday, and she said once a week on Thursdays would be fine, wouldn't interfere. And they were excited about it, because, you know, like I explained to them, it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for us because we are saving money.
Oh, yeah.
It helps the people over there to be able to go get their license and pay their taxes, and then it gets people in the library.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think along that same line, I'll just mention this as, in conjunction with that, as I asked to be put on the agenda of the Hearts Community Board, and I met with him yesterday, talked with him about Tuesday, about the possibility of opening the government day at Hearts. I had asked, Mary had asked each of the elected officials to send us an idea of what things they did to serve the people at those 2 sites, and I appreciate the feedback from the elected officials. And after looking at the costs associated with Government Day at Hearts, it really, we help them with everything up there anyway, other than what they pay, and it wouldn't incur additional costs for us to reopen that up there. And I think it's up to, you know, each individual office, you know, whether it be the sheriff's office, the county clerk's office, or the assessor's office, to decide on what they want to do about each site. But I just don't see that there's that much cost savings at Hearts by shutting it down and keeping it closed, when we could actually provide a place for the people to come to do those things that they need to do. And plus, you know, when we made that decision, we thought we wanted an online ability to pay taxes and things like that, and we since decided, it's been decided not to do that. So I would, you know, along with the Allen Creek opening that for Government Day there, and doing that at Hearts, I think it can be done. I think, you know, and it's good to know, you know, how much they use it. You know, that's one of the things we have trouble with in some of these areas, figuring out how much usage it gets, or how many people in the community are involved and things like that. And this looks like one of those things that we can, you know, implement at the public library and be open to Hearts. We're not going to incur a lot of additional expenses for that. And I think it's something that, like I said, we're not going to do it online. I think it means, there's a lot of people, as the sheriff brought to my attention yesterday, a lot of people don't even have computers to get online and things like that. And I realize that. I think eventually we need to do that. I think when we get the monies to do that, we need to go ahead and have the assessor help us do that. But I think in the meantime, not costing us that much more and still being able to provide those services means we should do what we can to do that. And I think all of us commissioners agree on that. I mean, this is a service that has been used well, especially in talking with the people at Hearts. It's something that they use quite a bit there. And I know it's called on over at Allen Creek too. And I think, as Commissioner Harless says, it's not bad getting people in the library either, you know. So I think that's something that it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah, and you know, on that same line, it's in order for us to do this. I mean, you know, I know that we're going to be continuing. It's going to be free at Allen Creek. I mean, in the library, still be offering it down at Hearts. But the main thing that we have to do is, we have to be able to provide the personnel to be able to go over there.
Had the sheriff hired an additional, did the sheriff hire an additional
Yeah,
person?
I don't think so. I think what, I'm certainly in favor of both places. I think we are able to provide many more services with the assessor's office and sheriff's office with having a location as opposed to just being able to pay taxes online, because we do so many other things at those sites. But a couple things that you may want to keep in mind on this, that there, as far as just logistics are concerned with the systems that we use, and there was a large amount of time put into the Allen Creek office and with getting it wired up. And there was a significant amount of time that Robbie spent at Harts getting it working to capacity. So, you may want to talk with him. This is not something that I think that you're probably going to be able to open next week at Allen Creek.
No, I don't think, what we really want to do is, I think, or at least what I want to do is kind of bring the commission up to where we were at as far as the things that I had looked at in the meantime.
Well, Harts is already okay.
Right, there's no additional cost.
Right, but what I'm saying.
And there was some wiring put in at the library back when we had government day there before.
And that's all still there.
Right, it may be, I don't know. But
Yeah, and so I don't know, I understand what you're saying. I think that kind of an expense, we would feel that the commission would have to take care of that kind of thing.
to the point, what I'm saying is you may want to, before you set a date to open, you
Right.
may want to have the IT guy over there and just look at it to see what needs to be done and what's to happen. And the other thing is I am certainly happy to man both of those offices, and I'm sure the sheriff is too. I'm not speaking for him, but, I'll remind you that one of my employees during the budget, specifically was cut because government day was to be shut down. So I would ask that you would reconsider that half-time employee so that we can adequately man that office.
And that would be,
Well, and I'd want to ask you too, to see if you can figure out some agreement to do that.
That is really I've already lost, this is 2 employees.
Well, and I think when I talked with him at the Harts Community Board, I told him there may need to be modification of what services are provided. So I think it's up to each individual office to decide what they can do and can't do. And I think we'd be willing to help as far as infrastructure development in those, if there's something else that needs to be done at the public library. As far as hiring additional personnel, it's just like the sheriff's not gonna have some
Right.
personnel involved.
Well, I was, and that's fine, but I was under the understanding at the budget meeting that that position was cut because government day was being closed
I think
down.
on the same time as we was talking about that, we was also talking about you putting up monies for the development of the internet. which
And I was happy to do that before my budget was cut $48,000. Of course, I had to find other monies for other
But I'm
things.
just saying, there's several different things you're dealing with, and we talked about that.
I'm not looking to have some debate with you, Doc. All I'm saying is that when we manned those offices for the last 2 years, that specifically that person was cut when government day was cut. All I'm asking is as a commission, consider giving me that half-time employee to command that office. Otherwise, I just adequately can't. I've lost an appraiser, his last day is tomorrow, because of the budget cuts. I lost a half-time employee because government day was cut. I'm just asking if you're going to reopen, I'm asking that you reconsider that part-time job. That's all I ask.
we can, and the thing about it is, our new budget doesn't kick in until July, and
And she's funded in July.
Yeah, and she's funded until July, so we
Right.
have adequate time to see where we want to be at.
Well, and I think as far as opening the sites, I would really like to open as soon as we can, but, it's only right probably to open at the same time. You know what I mean? It's,
I have no problem with going back on the Harts next week. You have to ask the sheriff because, like I said, our part-time girl was funded to July. I know the logistics of everything down there is up and going. As far
Well,
as,
it might be, better.
I
to
spoke,
wait
I
till-
spoke with Robbie and we're still running off the early voting routers down at Harts. I told him just to leave it down there because we.
Harts is good, and
We
we
usually
have-
just use it for early voting anyway.
you may want to
We
check
also
with the
have a
sheriff, but
route.
But I wouldn't want, the problem I wouldn't want to have, starting July 1st, him have to change personnel and things, because that's what we're talking about, is he has somebody now versus after July 1st.
Well, if she's budgeted after July 1st, she's not going anywhere. I mean,
All we have to do is, everything's in place right now. All we have to do is we just have to send Robbie to, Allen Creek,
Just
just
see
to
what
make
needs to
sure
be done.
everything's in place.
I think it's a great idea.
And everything's completely funded all the way up until July.
Yeah.
So all we have to do is we gotta come up, to extend it, we just gotta come up with a little bit of money. And we should know where we're at by the time we
I think we
get
can
there.
sit down with his budgets and go over them and see if we can find the money in there to pay her if it's $12,000.
Yeah, because the thing is, and I think there's a time and place for this discussion, but when you pull from one office, which you still have folks coming here, just because Allen Creek is open, doesn't mean Hamlin shuts down. Just because Harts is open, doesn't mean Hamlin shuts down. And when you pull from here and put over there, you're taking people out of the office, and it's hard to do things whenever you don't have enough personnel to do it. Don't need a full-time girl, just what we've done for the last 2 years with her.
But if we're looking at the expense and what we're saving, I think that with what it would cost to have an additional part-time employee, I think that if we looked at it and we could dive into some
No, we
numbers,
can do that. I think what we need to do.
That's what we need to do.
We'll just sit down and look at the budget and see what we have where,
Yeah.
and what he's got, and, versus what he had when he brought it to the commission, and things like that, so.
But
That's
everything's
all
good.
I have.
That's all you have? That's all you have? All right. Well, I don't have anything. I appreciate all the work with the dilapidated buildings, the LCPC coming in. Rick Helton, appreciate what you're doing. Had a lot in attendance at our last meeting with the Bad Buildings Project. Appreciate it, Mayor. Don't have anything else? Chad, Stewart, do you have anything that you want to bring? If not, I move that we adjourn.
I say that.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That being unanimous, motion carried.
Yes.